I'm Sarah Repucci. I'm the Global Head for Research Programs at Economist Impact, and I'm really pleased to welcome you to our salon on manufacturing in the new globalization. I also want to thank our sponsor, the Bahrain Economic Development Board, for making this event possible. Please feel free to come in and take your seats. The new globalization, which is what we are terming this time that we're in post-COVID, has forced executives to rethink their firms and their supply chains. It's no longer sufficient to strive for efficiency. We're now expected to be resilient, redundant, and flexible. At Economist Impact, our trade in transition research has found that 47% of executives say that they are diversifying their supply chains. We found that companies have been moving away from the just-in-case model, and instead they're trying to balance cost effectiveness against efficiency. And they're doing this through investing in technology, in AI, and operationalizing and optimizing their inventory levels. We've also found that 96% of executives, 96%, say that they have had to change their trade operations as a result of geopolitical shocks. But making these changes is time-consuming and it's very expensive. And it may require a substantial investment in technology, reshaping of supply chains, and a fundamental change in business models. So executives need to know that they are making the right decisions before they make these decisions. So our salon is going to discuss these issues and more. We will start by discussing the manufacturing supply chains and ask how business leaders can prepare for these uncertain times that we're in. And then we will have a panel discussion on reshaping supply chains, how to assess costs, followed by speed networking at the end. This salon now is the first of two that we're doing today. Our second salon is starting at 1:30, and it will be on the battle for tech talent, exploring how economies need to adapt to solve the skills crunch, and you're all welcome to stay for that as well. Today is part of a multi-year series that we've been doing on the transformation agenda, and it's been sponsored by the Bahrain Economic Development Board. So after our two salons today, we're doing two more in New York, and then we'll be culminating with our flagship event, FinTech Forward, which will take place on October 2nd in Bahrain. You may have seen the QR codes on our signage. I invite you to scan those and read about the event and hopefully sign up to join us in Bahrain in October. So I would now like to welcome our opening speaker to the stage. Alicemarie Geoffrion is the President for Packaging North America at DHL Supply Chains. Welcome, Alicemarie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you all.
So let's start with some questions just to get the lay of the land a bit. So tell us a bit about some of the economic pressures that you've been seeing over the past few years and what you've been seeing executives do to respond to it.
So as you mentioned, there's been a lot of changes globally in the world. So COVID, of course, a lot of things are going on globally in different countries and with transportation. But one of the things that we're starting to see for ourselves and for our customers is that we need to really focus on diversifying our supply chain. So looking at more omni-sourcing strategies, nearshoring, and basically making sure that we are much more prepared than we were in the past. So ultimately, everything that we're doing and what we're helping our customers do is about building more resilient supply chains. And you mentioned quite a few of these in your opening speech. But it's really about making sure that we have the right amount of investments and the automation and the AI. We are now getting access to a tremendous amount of data and information, but a lot of companies don't necessarily know what to do with that data and information. So part of what we're doing and we're trying to help our customers do is be able to make sure that there's a strategy around what data, what information you should capture, how you can then take that information and use that information to build more resilient supply chains, and then make sure that that information and data is translated to the very lowest level too. So you think about it, if you have our resources working inside of our site, trying to run the operations, whether it's for just straight warehousing, whether it's for contract manufacturing, contract packaging, they have to execute. And if we just start grabbing information from all different places and just throwing it back at them, they're not necessarily sure what to do. So there is a whole, I would say, new strategy around being able to take all of the information, all of the data that we're capturing, and make sure that we can make that usable for the frontline employees. So there's just a lot of, I would say, effort going around there. You also mentioned flexibility. We saw that with COVID and with some of these global changes, you have to be extremely flexible and make much faster changes than we did before in the past. And so in the past, I know that people would put projects in place. You'd have all kinds of pilots and approval processes and everything that would take place. We don't really have that luxury anymore. So we, as an organization, our customers, are also looking at how to pilot programs much faster, how to be able to take those programs that you've piloted and make them scalable and execute them much faster. So it takes much more coordination than it did in the past. And so, we often refer to it as, the orchestration across the entire supply chain, which is really making sure that our supply chains are much more transparent now, that we are orchestrating those supply chains much better, and we're making sure that our customers can take advantage of that too.
It's really fascinating. I'd love to dig in on maybe a couple examples. So maybe tell us something about the supply chain for DHL, and maybe I'd love to dig in on this issue of data and what kind of data you're collecting and how you're using it.
Yeah, so one example, so from one of our operations, we have a contract manufacturing sites and contract packaging sites. And I would say in the past, we would operate those sites with software and technology, right? So you would manage the productivity of those sites, manage the productivities of the lines by just capturing the data along the way in sort of the traditional way. And what we have found is that we're missing a whole bunch of things, right? So, you'll start a project or a job or a manufacturing job, and you say, okay, here's where it starts, here's where it ended, this is how long it took, this is our efficiency levels, but we don't know what really happened necessarily in between that whole process. So some of the things that we've been doing is, for instance, we'll put camera sensors across every aspect of a line. So now we're capturing continuous amounts of data throughout the entire process. And as you can imagine, we are getting tens of thousands of records, every single shift that's telling us, did a product come through the line at the flow it was supposed to come through? Was there a bottleneck at a certain point? Where in that line should we go back and look at how to make it more efficient so that the manufacturing process is more efficient? It's also used in our contract packaging processes as well to make those more efficient. So if you think about it, we had tools before, but they were sort of more at a higher level. Now we're going down to a very granular level and saying, we're going to capture every single point on a line so that we know exactly where we can go focus to make that line much better, much more efficient. And that's led to so many different projects. It's led us to implement different types of automation in our operations. It's led us to work with our customers to identify different ways of, I would say, sourcing and leveraging different material types because we found them to be bottlenecks. So it's an endless amount of information. That's why I'm saying it's very important that we're capturing so much. We have to know what to do with it all as well. And I think a lot of organizations are struggling with that, for sure.
Yeah, I'm curious. There must be a massive amount of data, and you must need different skills among your talent pool to process it and to know what to do with it.
Yes. So what I've seen with ourselves and with our customers is that before, everything related to data and analytics and information, that was IT's problem, right? They'd capture the data, they'd tell you, here's the reports you can have, and here's what you can do. And what we've seen is you cannot operate that way anymore. So now what we're doing is that every single one of our employees and our leaders within our organization, and I'm talking from the executive level all the way down into the middle management and even into the front line, they are accountable for understanding how we can leverage the new technologies out there, how you can leverage the AI and the ML. So we have a lot of projects, for instance, that'll say, okay, the legal team, you need to take ownership of all this data and information, all these new tools out there, this new AI and ChatGPT, and you need to figure out how that's going to make your jobs better. And we're doing it from a legal perspective, we're doing it from an HR perspective, we're doing it from a business development perspective, because no longer are these IT problems and issues. These are problems that the organization must solve with everybody. And so that is a huge shift than what I used to see in the past, which is very much, I'm going to call up IT. IT is going to put together a project plan for me. They're going to get me data I'm going to ask for, and it's going to take some time. And it's not like that anymore. So our businesses and our leaders and our departments and our different functions are owning these projects differently. They're owning what needs to come from this data and information. And also, they're owning what insights you can get out of it, which is definitely a shift than before, for sure.
And so this relates to what you were saying at the beginning about being able to respond quickly. And I'd love you to give maybe some examples of that or how you've seen that evolve.
Yeah, so I would say this occurred mostly during COVID, but during COVID we had huge networks of warehouses and operations for our customers. But we were the recipient of a lot of things. So we're the recipient of inventory, the recipient of materials, to packaged products, all kinds of things. But there was a breakdown in those supply chains because some of the countries that those products were coming from weren't able to get the labor to make them. They weren't able to source them. So some of the things that we started to do is we said, okay, well, we can offer these services we hadn't offered before. So our organization took, I would say, on more, we call them value-added services, but we started to do more sourcing of materials, right? And not just materials for consumption, but packaging materials, actual materials that go inside of kits. Some of them were actually customer product materials as well that they needed to do to build certain kits. We hadn't done that in the past. It was not something that was asked of us, but when our customers could not get the materials, they said, well, can you guys go get them? So we did a lot more local sourcing than before. Also, a lot of activities that our customers used to do off-site around taking products from our warehouses, customizing them somehow, creating new SKUs and getting back to our warehouses and then sending them out. That couldn't happen anymore because there was just too many issues with the labor. There's too many issues as what was going on with different countries and different rules. So we started to do more activity like contract manufacturing inside of our facilities, which we had not done before. And so our customers would come to us and say, we're just going to send you bulk shipments of these products. We need you to create new SKUs for us. And that's new configurations, new ways, basically, think of a simple example as, in retail locations, some retailers need 6 packs of something, some retailers need 12 packs of something. They used to do all of that work, send it out, get it customized, and send back in. Now we can do that in the facility because there was just no time. So going back to being very agile and flexible, we had to be able to react very quickly and just be able to say, okay, we didn't do that before, but we know you need to do that. And we had to figure out on the fly ways to be able to meet materials needs, meet postponement and customization needs, which we didn't have to do before, and be able to help the customers still get the product to the end consumers, which was very challenging, as we all know, during COVID, for sure.
And since COVID, we've had high inflation, economic uncertainty. We've had trade tensions between the U.S. and China. What have those developments, kind of impacts have those had?
I mean, there's definitely been impacts on those. I mean, some of our customers are changing their sourcing strategies, right? And the China Plus One strategies, right? Making sure that there's different sourcing options. And we've invested in different, I would say, organizations, different global organizations to really help support that as well. But in general, I would say we've been affected by just about every global event that you guys have seen. And I'm sure all of you have been to, whether it's the events with the wars, whether it's with the Red Sea, whether it's with China. We just had to make sure that, as an organization, you have to have your strategy. You have to have, what guiding principles you're going to have. And then every single business unit, every single site has to be flexible to be able to adjust to that. And that's what we've had to do. We've had to make sure that our workforce understands that we are going to move faster than before. We are going to do things we didn't do before. We're going to be much more flexible than we were before. And we have to still do it with excellence in mind, because one of the things that we focus on, right, is doing things right the first time. And the last thing we want to do is just have everybody going off and just trying to do things fast and missing the point, which is making sure that we follow being a very safe environment, ensuring that we are not making mistakes and that we are driving for excellence for our customers. So I think as organizations, we all need to never forget those principles, but to be able to be extremely flexible and make sure we can meet some of the needs. And what's going on in the global economy is affecting, what we're doing in our decisions. But I think it's just a testament that we have to be very agile and very flexible.
What are some of the challenges that you've encountered with this move towards local sourcing, and what have you done to overcome them?
Yeah, I would say initially the challenges is that we didn't necessarily have the right planning tools. We didn't have the right, I would say, strategy around the demand side of that business, because we were asked to do something ad hoc. So over the last several years, we have spent a lot of, I would say, investment in making sure that we had the right tools for the demand planning side of the business, because it's very easy for someone to say, oh, I'm going to go buy this material. It's very difficult for somebody to say, I need to buy this material at this price, at this quantity, and I need it to deliver at this time. It seems simple, but it is actually not simple. So a customer, for instance, would come to us and say, I need you to manufacture this new SKU, and it needs to look like X. But within that SKU and within that end product, there could be 50, 60 components you have to purchase in order to get that. And of those components, you have to determine when to buy which ones, and you have to determine what's the right demand to meet that one finished SKU. So there's a lot of coordination that gets involved. So I would say investing in the right tools from the very beginning was extremely important. And demand planning is very, very important, because it not only ensures that you can have the right product at the right time and the right, the purchases at the right amount, but it also drives all of our sustainability initiatives, because the best way to be more sustainable is to have more accurate planning. So I know that when we went to take over some operations for some of our customers, there would be warehouses of inventory that was obsolete, that they didn't use, but nobody wants to get rid of, because I think everybody knows that, right? That's going to hit someone's P&L. So it's not until there's a change in leadership where someone's sort of free and clear of that there's going to be action taken. So we saw a lot of excess obsolete inventory in some of the operations that we had to take over. And I will say that now when we take on more sourcing and we look at the demand planning side of things with our customers, that's a huge focus for us, because the most sustainable thing you can do is not to purchase something you're not going to use, right? And so there's just a lot of, I would say, effort that's gone into having the right tools at the very beginning of a supply chain, because ultimately it affects every single thing across that entire supply chain.
I'm glad you brought up sustainability, because I'd love to talk about that a bit more. I think traditionally sustainability is thought of as an added cost and a burden. Do you think that sustainability can be a competitive advantage, and if so, how?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we know that initially we're going to have to make investments, and we know that our customers and the brands have to make investments in sustainability. But ultimately, it is going to be an advantage for the companies that could be the most sustainable. So as an organization, we are investing between 2020 and 2030, $7 billion to be more sustainable. And a lot of it doesn't necessarily have to do with the supply chain side of our business. A lot has to do with the transportation side of the business, right? Electric vehicle fleets, making sure we have more sustainable fuels. So there's a lot of activity that's going around that. But again, there's a lot of activity that's going around making sure that if we put up a new warehouse, right, to manage our customer supply chain, we're doing it from a net zero perspective, right? And that goes every single thing from the lighting down to the recycling programs, down to how you're setting up the lines, how you're setting up the shifts and the hours people are working, it's all connected. So the entire supply chain is connected. And so if you have a very efficient supply chain that focuses on sustainability, ultimately that is going to be a competitive advantage for our customers and for ourselves as well. So I think it's extremely important. And for us, sustainability is always lumped with the ESG because there's more than just the sustainability side of it. There's the whole social side of it. And so we're investing quite a bit of money, and we see our customers investing quite a bit on the social side as well. And I would say it's important because you want your workforce to be happy, and that's one of the best ways to make the workforce happy. And then that workforce will be much more efficient too if they feel as if they're coming to an organization that cares about them, that they belong in. And I think that's important for all of our companies and so forth. So I think we continue to make great investments on that. And just as a sort of a fun little, I don't know if it's investment, but one thing that we've recently done from a ESG perspective is we've been working with the Girl Scouts. So anybody buy Girl Scout cookies here? All right, well, I definitely eat them. So if you think about it, the Girl Scouts have to do logistics, right? They're taking orders, they're fulfilling the orders, they're making sure those orders get delivered. But to them, they're raising money, they're earning badges, they're doing all kinds of things. But we've partnered with them and said, well, that's really supply chain. So how could we help young women recognize that what they're doing is actually supply chain? Obviously, we want to encourage them to have careers in supply chain. But so we have created a badge, it's a supply chain badge, that they can earn by coming to a workshop. And it's just an all-day workshop. And we show them everything that they're doing, supply chain logistic related. It gets them really excited about it. So we've been through, I think now 10 or maybe 10 to 15 different workshops. So hundreds of girls have earned this supply chain badge. But I think what's most amazing is that the realization for them that what they're doing is supply chain, and they hear about supply chain now, it's just good to see that they're now very interested in something they had no idea what it was before. So there's just an example of how we're trying to connect the whole ESG strategy together.
I want my daughter to be involved.
Yes, yes.
So in the little bit of time we have left, I'd love to hear, in terms of a next step investment, what's your recommendation in terms of where to start or what you think is most crucial right now?
I would say, investing in the automation, the innovation is very important. Robotics, we have spent a lot of time investing in robotics across our organization, and that's just not on the manufacturing lines, but that's also just in helping the whole picking, packing process. So I don't know if anyone's heard of the Locust bots, where they kind of go through the warehouse to help assist with picking. We have now put in Locust bots in many warehouses, and they've assisted with over 5 million picks. So if you think about that, that's, basically taking away the frontline workers, walking across in and out of aisles to be able to pick things. These bots are making that process easier for them and much faster. So continuous investments in the robotic side of things as well is extremely important. I would say cybersecurity is also huge, because now that we're collecting more data and we're collecting more information, that just makes supply chains more vulnerable as well. So as organizations, you must pay attention to cybersecurity and must have plans to be resilient when something occurs. We've had customers that have had attacks, and we've had to go from being very highly automated within one day to the next day of taking orders and fulfilling orders on spreadsheets, because we cannot connect our systems and we cannot risk it. So that goes to being just very prepared, but also knowing that sometimes that automation is going to have to go away if you need to fulfill orders and you don't want to risk your business as well. So we have seen the two extremes of that too. So I think that's extremely important as well. And just making sure that your workforce is trained and that they understand what needs to be done. And I mean at all levels. So we're doing training across all levels, all the way down to the front line, because for our frontline resources to use the new automation, the new tools that are out there, we have to train them differently. And they get excited about that. So it's more exciting for them to come to work and learn how to use robotics and learn how to work with the bots and program them than it is to just fulfill an order, walk, put it in a box, and walk back. So they're excited about that too, but you have to have the right processes and the training in place to be able to support that for sure.
Excellent. Well, Alicemarie, thank you so much.
Thank you.